Okay, I've taken a break from Normandy 44 for a few weeks and finally getting back into it. So here we are with turn 3, and turn 3 weather is storms, which is good for the Germans, bad for the Allies, particularly at this very early stage, turn 3. There are no air units, no naval units, no supply points for the Allies. The Germans get 3 supply points and an armour replacement. Now, out on the left around Utah Beach, the Germans are really tightening this noose around that Allied beachhead. The Americans are really struggling here. The airborne units suffered very heavily in those first 2 turns, and it's becoming evident now in turn 3 that they are struggling to find the strength to break through anywhere. Elsewhere, sort of south of Bayeux, the Germans just moving up to form a very loose sort of front line. They don't have strength in this area, but neither do the Allies have much strength to press hard. Over around Caen, you can see German reinforcements have finally arrived. These are the turn 2 reinforcements, which have started to form a line just sort of north-east of Caen, and a very solid front line as well. You can see the Germans have really pushed the British and Canadians back from that area and look to have a pretty solid defensive position. They've occupied some key areas there, which has secured the area. Now, in combat out in the west, around St. Mary-Glise, the Germans continue to push those airborne units back. They force them back away from the sort of marshy area just southeast of Pont-l'Abbé, and over in the east they inflict some more damage on those British units out in the far east. You can see where those German 12th SS units are. They've actually pushed, north of Caen, pushing the British back. And yeah, really threatening their positions in this area. So during the Allied player turn, the Americans around Utah struggling, trying to push out the beachhead just a little bit. What they basically did this turn was reorganise some of their armoured units to try and give some strength for some attacks. And the centre, north of Saint-Lô and near Bayeux, they are pushing against probably the weakest point in the German lines, and trying to push around behind Carentan. You can't see Carentan; it's just out to the left there. But these Americans are trying to push through sort of Travier, Saint-Clair, Cellel, around to the left, towards Saint-Lô. This is probably the one area where the Germans haven't defended very well, and so they're trying to exploit the Allies. And out around Caen in the east, the British and Canadians kind of reform their lines and sort of make contact with the Germans all around that west, north, and northeastern outskirts of town. This is going to be really hard. As I said, Germans have some pretty strong defensive positions here. Their reinforcements have arrived. It's going to be a tough push for the Allies around this area. Now, I've just ran through the American combat out in the west here. I wanted to just pause and run through things to show you what bad luck the Americans have been having. They launched a pretty strong attack here on the Crisbeck battery. And, I mean, this is a well-defended area. They only had 1-to-1 odds to start with, but they have troop superiority, armour superiority, and they use some artillery as well to give them 4-to-1 odds. They rolled a DR, which isn't too bad, forcing the defenders to retreat, but the Germans put up a determined defence, rolled a 6, which forced the Allies to suffer a hit instead. And the battery and the strong point remains right where it is. Down here, just north of Carentan, they had an exchange, which they really don't need at the moment. It's more losses. You can see this heavily reduced with 2 heavily reduced American stacks here. Their one success in this area was out here in Isigny-sur-Mer, where they forced I think it was a D1 result, which forced those defenders to retreat, and of course have to stop in the town, if I'm doing that correctly. So just the one loss, 1 mixed result, and 1 success out in this area. But the Americans, with their, they're picking where to attack. They really need more success than just that one. On the upside, this does threaten the eastern side of Carentan, and there aren't a lot of German defences in this area. So hopefully that puts some pressure and relieves the position at Utah. And finally, out in the east, the British only launched 2 attacks. One on Tilly-sur-Seulles, sort of in the centre there, just to the left of Caen, and one on Buron, just on the northwest outskirts of Caen. And they had pretty successful out on the left. They received, I think it was a D1 result, and advanced into the town. And in Buron, they had a A1 DR result. So they suffered 1 hit, but forced the Germans to retreat and have pushed further into those outskirts. So that's the end of the 3rd turn. It's hard to say how things are going. I'm not happy around Utah, but elsewhere the Allies are slowly pushing out, and there are some weak points in those German defences. They've really focused their defences around Caen, but a bit weaker out in the centre. All right, that's the end of the 3rd turn. We're heading into the 9th of June.